Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guest, but we want to give a shout out to our podcast partners, the Florida Coaches Coalition, Vital Signs Wall of Fame, the Global Community of Women in High School Sports, and We Coach. Now, you've heard me say before, these are four great organizations. You should really add them to your network. And now, don't hit that fast forward button. Stay with us for the next 3 minutes. We're going to give our sponsors a shout out. These are all companies that I used as an athletic director. You should be using them too. Here we go. We want to say thanks to Gipper, the official social media graphics solution for the Educational AD Podcast. Go to Gipper.com. Their team is going to show you how to start creating world-class content for your school social media channel. Mention this podcast, they'll give you a nice discount. Your kids are on social media, and if you're not, you're missing a great opportunity to promote your teams and your programs. Go to Gipper.com and get started today. We also want to say thanks to Home Campus. Home Campus is the exclusive high school and state association management platform for us. It's also your one-stop platform for things like scheduling, student-athlete clearance and eligibility, and a whole lot more. As a high school AD, I used Home Campus every single day, and it was just great. To get started and join the Home Campus team, all you have to do is go to homecampus.com. That's homecampus.com. We also want to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Go to their website and check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's a great way to display your school record boards for all the teams, or your school's Hall of Fame, or simply showcase your school's proudest moments. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Mention this podcast, you'll get a nice discount. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided that allowed them to coach our kids at the highest level. At Huddle, we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 8 million users. Turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to thank our good friends at Snap Mobile. Go to their website, snapraise.com. Check out their entire suite of platforms designed to help you do your job better. If you're looking for a fundraiser, stop right here. Snap Raise, hands down the best. But there's so much more. You'll find it all at snapraise.com. We also want to thank Hometown Ticketing. Hometown Ticketing is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. I don't think I need to say anything more. Go to hometownticketing.com. They're going to show you how to set up and sell tickets for all of your events. It's digital ticketing that offers more. hometownticketing.com. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo and see their scoreboards and their score tables in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Let their team get you set up with a brand new indoor score table. sidelineinteractive.com. We'd also like to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to set up a custom survey that's going to let you take the pulse of your parents and your student athletes. Now, the information that will come back is going to be overwhelmingly positive, but it will also let you connect with those squeaky wheel parents that complain about just about everything. And that's a tremendously valuable piece of information to have, all that positive support, when you're talking with a frustrated parent or your principal or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. athleticsurveys.com. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going up to Massachusetts today, and we're going to be visiting with Todd Robbins. Todd is a registered athletic administrator, and he's the director of athletics at Fitchburg High School, which is in Leominster, Massachusetts. Todd, welcome to the podcast.
Jake, I'll make a quick correction on you right off the bat. So we're Twin Cities. Leominster is where I was born, raised, grew up, graduated from high school. Fitchburg is our arch rival. It's sort of like playing for the New York Yankees. So I am now the AD of my arch rival institution in the city of Fitchburg, and it is fascinating and exciting to be here as well.
So that's Fitchburg High School it's Leominster High School in Fitchburg. Is that it?
No, so it's Fitchburg High School in Fitchburg, Massachusetts.
Okay.
I graduated from Leominster High School in Leominster, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. I guess I misread the NIAAA's membership portal. So Todd Robbins, Fitchburg High School in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. Welcome. Well, you and I were talking before we started recording. It's a busy time for athletic directors. For our listeners, we're recording this on October 4th, so it's going to be very timely when you're listening to it. Todd, as you know, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that quick bio, where you were born, where you grew up. Maybe take us up through your own college years, and then we'll take a break and then come back and hear more about your career. But what's the Todd Robbins origin story?
No, I appreciate that. I am not your typical athletic director candidate, now athletic director serving. I am not a former star Hall of Fame athlete. I am not a star veteran coach. I am not a longtime health and wellness teacher or a phys ed teacher. I am a sports broadcaster by trade and an official by trade, and lumped all those together and when I became an educator and found a great administrative opportunity. So as I said, born and raised in Leominster, graduated from Leominster High School, class of 2003, then went from there to Syracuse University, where I did my undergraduate work in political science. And really the target was to be a play-by-play sports broadcaster. That's what I saw myself doing. I knew I wanted that from a very early age. You're talking 8, 9, 10 years old, and narrating the video games I was playing and wanting to do play-by-play. That's where I wanted to be. And so that's why I went to Syracuse. They call it Sportscaster U for a reason. They've turned out so many of the best. And I got a chance to study and work with and compete against some of the best, announcers that have come out of that, time period. We have announcers that have gone on from the era I was there, that are doing play-by-play for the Chicago White Sox and are doing major play-by-play for ESPN and what have you. And, that niche world, can be difficult to get into. So I always sort of knew in the back of my mind that the possibility of education was there. I tell people that, when I think about my high school years, I've got a couple of good friends. One is my wife, who I went to high school with. The other is, of course, my best friend who now lives out of state. And then that's it. The people I connect with, that I was still in touch with, that I went to high school with, were my teachers. So it's no surprise that I landed in education. I think I always sort of had that as sort of my secondary, I'd like to teach at some point. And I just got a dream opportunity. I got an opportunity to merge my love for radio and television with teaching it at the high school level. And so I was living in Leominster, but I was teaching at Watertown High School in Watertown, Massachusetts, which is a small suburb right outside of Boston. And I've been there prior to taking this job at Fitchburg for 9 years. And so this, my 10th full year in education as a full-time educator, first year as an administrator here at Fitchburg High School.
Well, I love all the parallels. 100 years ago when I was in college, I worked at the college radio station, thought that might be an area I'd go into. And you mentioned officiating. I'm still a high school basketball official and a track official too. I want to go back to those days at Syracuse, when you were, broadcasting or training to be a broadcaster.
Sure.
While you're doing an event, was there anything that at the time it didn't seem like much, but now as an athletic director, years later, you look back and say, hey, that was an important lesson for me. Anything come to mind?
Sure. I was very lucky in the time period that I was there. I was always looking for something new or to sort of find the cutting edge of where we were technologically. And at that time, in the 2003 to 2007 window, streaming audio was sort of the beginnings of where we were. We're starting to see some, websites that were streaming audio, and Syracuse was streaming, their sort of major athletic events. They were just simulcasting their radio coverage over to their website. And I was, at that time, I had started officiating fast pitch softball as a sophomore in high school. And so I was deep in that softball community. And so Syracuse had a softball program, and I had a friend who did, some play-by-play of baseball. And I said, hey, I think it would be cool if we went off and did some softball play-by-play, and they streamed it to the website. I went to the athletic department. I spoke to the SID who was in charge of softball, who then put me in charge of the person who was in charge, of the sports information department. Sue Edson and Pete Moore were both still there today. Brian Gunning was the softball contact at that point in time, and said, hey, this is what we want to do. Would you guys, be, sort of supportive of that? So it wasn't just working at the campus radio station. It was also that opportunity to work with the athletic department directly in starting to offer these live streams. And so I got to see sort of what went on in the background on the sort of university side of things. And that was sort of a little peek into the athletic department world. I'll tell you where I really got my sort of interest in, my little peek into athletic administration. It came in high school. We had a program called City Official for a Day. And you could apply every year for what city position you essentially wanted to shadow for one day. And I had an athletic director who was part of sort of my getting started as broadcaster in high school. His name was Ralph Case. And I put in to be the athletic director for a day, and literally shadowed him wherever he went. Throughout that day, we went, checked fields. We went and did all the things that athletic administrators did. He took meetings. I was right there with him. And so that one day, that one experience has always sort of sat in the back of my mind as a potential when I was thinking about where might my career shift if I wanted to leave the classroom, and the right opportunity came along, and it was athletic administration would be that right fit. I love our people who want to be principals, who want to be superintendents. That was never going to be me if I left the classroom. If I left the classroom, it was going to be the opportunity to marry my communication skills with the broadcasting piece in my life, with the officiating piece, and tying all that together into athletic administration for the betterment of student athletes. And at the end of the day, the right opportunity came along, and here I am.
Boy, that's really cool that you're able to combine, those passions, if you will, into your job. Good lesson for our younger listeners. We're going to go and take our first break, but our guest today is Todd Robbins. He's a registered athletic administrator, and he is the director of athletics at Fitchburg High School, and that is in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. Please stay with us. We'll be back with some more. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our good friends at Gipper for their support of the podcast. In fact, Gipper is the official social media graphics solution for the podcast. I want you to go to Gipper.com and talk to one of their representatives. They are going to get you set up, and pretty soon you're going to be creating world-class content for your school's social media channel. Your kids are on social media, and if you're not, you're missing a great opportunity to promote your athletes and celebrate your teams. Gipper is used by over 3,000 high school and college athletic programs around the country, and it's professional graphic design made simple. In fact, it's so simple, even I can use it. Go to Gipper.com, mention this podcast, and they'll give you a nice discount. That's Gipper.com.
Jake, I love Gipper. So it's 3,001 at least schools that are using Gipper. It was a priority for me when I took this job. All of about 2 months ago, I said to our administration, we've got to get Gipper. We need to increase our social media presence. We need to have that look of the college level, here at the high school level, if we're going to take what we're doing in our athletics department to the next level. And I thank the great folks at Gipper. They've been tremendous partners at this point, and it's been a lot of fun. It's one of the fun parts of the everyday here in athletics.
Oh, yeah, I really didn't get a chance to use Gipper myself, as it was just really coming into vogue when I retired as an AD. But it is so cool, and as I said in the sponsorship message, it's so easy. Even an old guy like me can post some pretty good social media stuff. So thanks for sharing. I'm going to pass that on. Once again, for our listeners, our guest today is Todd Robbins. He's the athletic director at Fitchburg High School in Massachusetts. Todd, you mentioned that you had, let's say a non-traditional path to becoming an AD. Talk about that a little bit. I think our younger ADs or a lot of aspiring ADs listen to this podcast and they really don't understand that you just don't suddenly get that athletic director's chair. There's a journey to it. So talk a little bit about your journey.
No, I appreciate that. And I think that is an important aspect to this because I think the trend right now is varying for how people get into this, responsibility at this point. And all the ADs that I've liaised with over the years as a media member, they all were former teachers of one stripe or another. And it's only within the last, decade or so that they have started to hire athletic administrators that are coming straight out of school. And while that's tremendous, they also lack that foundation in education. And if you're going to be a really effective athletic administrator, you've got to understand the basis of educational athletics. So I would never have pursued this role without having spent time in the classroom. And so my 9 years as a teacher prior to taking this role this year, really is incredibly informative in the job that I'm doing, because I do believe in that partnership between the academic side of the house and the athletic side of the house. We can help each other. We can be the student in student athlete prioritize, that point right out of the gates. And so, to have that foundation, to have gone through, to have taught, something that I'm passionate about in radio and television and career communications, was a really great foundation for me. And when the question was posed to me, you've never coached anything. I said, yep, that's correct. And that you could take that either way. I have not actually coached anything as a sport coach traditionally. But I have spent every day for 9 years coaching students on being in the radio and television field, because good teaching is coaching and good coaching is good teaching. And that is truly how I see this point. And so a lot of the experiences I felt like that coaches have in taking something that they are either talented at or really great mindset wise, and a natural at athletically, and try to translate that to students and build lessons for them in practice, is the same thing I was trying to do in radio and TV. I could run through different, drills. We could practice various aspects of the industry. We could put them into the position to actually be successful. And then when we would hit record and actually start to produce a show, that's the time where they, as the broadcaster, would have to take the baton and run with it. And I think that's the same feeling that every coach has when they get to game day, is at some juncture, there's a transition of, you could be the best coach in the world, but the student athlete has to then take that teaching and they've got to run with it and they've got to apply it in a game situation. And so, yeah, not the same traditional path, but very similar. And I would say the same for officiating. I was incredibly fortunate, as I said, to start officiating as a sophomore in high school, and then to follow that path and officiate as sort of my part-time job through high school, through college. And then when I graduated from college, I got the chance to go from working at the high school level to move to the college level, and started at Division III and then worked my way up to Division I, got a chance to go to the professional softball league, which was National Pro Fast Pitch at the time, which is now gone defunct. But, I felt incredibly fortunate to work with these athletes at varying levels and see varying levels, and then to help other officials try to grow their game and get better and be out at events and to give them feedback. And so, like I said, while maybe not a traditional model, I bring a lot of those same features and experiences to this job, just from different pathways.
Yeah. You made an interesting comment earlier on about, how you saw yourself at some point down the road in the role of athletic director, not as a principal, not as a superintendent. And it just made me think that it used to be, I'm stumbling for the right words here. When I was starting out 40 years ago, just out of college, I think you would see a teacher that was also coaching. The coach would eventually at some point become an AD. The AD might move into that principal's chair and on into the superintendent's chair. That's not as common anymore. I think a lot of people go straight from teaching to assistant principal and then up that ladder. But I think those administrators that don't have that global view of a school that you get as a coach, as an athletic director, really, I'm going to say maybe they're not at their best. So I'm trying to be very diplomatic here. What are your thoughts on that subject? I know I'm coming out of left field with that, but you made me
No,
think
no,
of it.
not at all.
Yeah.
I think the more global view of your school district that you have, or being in a school that you have, the better armed you are, and that's why I say, it was incredibly instructive to have been in the classroom before moving to an administrative role, because I understand what teachers are going through right now. I know what the last almost decade was like as a teacher. I know how difficult the pandemic was. I know how it's affected the byproduct with students. And then I can also see how that's translated to athletics. That information is instructive, and it does help us when we're in situations where I can say to our teachers here, hey, if you're having trouble reaching a student, sometimes the best way to reach them is to find that thing. What is that thread that gets them out of bed and into the building every day? And for a lot of kids, it's athletics. But we can't lose in that process that while you may want to be a great athlete and you may struggle with school, that competing athletically is a privilege, and it's one that's earned through your work in the classroom. And so if we can be that partner on the academic side that helps to get students out of bed in the building, give their very best academically, and then get them to come out and compete athletically to reach their peak performance, then we've done a great service working together. And that synergy between academics and athletics is the root of what educational athletics is supposed to be. And I am the guy who believes altruistically that that is truly the mission that we are on, and that is what we should be striving for every day.
No, I think you hit it right on the head, and it made me think of a phrase that many years ago, one of the principals at the school where I was the AD, started the school year, was talking about that, connecting with to the teachers, about connecting with the students, and he used that train of thought. He said, for the students, because we had 85% of our students were involved in athletics. He was telling the teachers that the student wants to be an athlete, but the kid wants to be an athlete. They need to be a student. For the teachers, you want that kid to appreciate your lesson. You need to have a relationship with them before that's going to happen. And just showing up at their games once in a while is going to help you create that relationship. Good stuff. We're going to go and take a quick break here, but we are going to come back with more. Once again, our guest today is Todd Robbins. He's the athletic director at Fitchburg High School, and that's in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We'd like to thank Home Campus for their support. Home Campus is the exclusive high school and state association platform for the podcast. It's also your one-stop for things like schedules, student athlete eligibility and clearance, keeping track of coaches, and a whole lot more. As an athletic director, I used Home Campus every single day, and it was just great. And the Home Campus staff was great to work with too. To get started, all you have to do is go to homecampus.com. That's homecampus.com. We'd also like to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Go to their website and check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's a great way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the events, or your school's Hall of Fame, or simply share your school's diverse history and your proudest moments. The website is easy to remember. It's vitalsignswalloffame.com. Mention this podcast, they'll give you a nice discount. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. We'd also like to say thank you to Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, we were a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided to help them coach our kids up to the highest level. Go to huddle.com, see why we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 8 million users and turn your school into a Huddle school. That's huddle.com.
Jake, another great sponsor there. Huddle has been a tremendous tool, and I keep trying to encourage more and more of my coaches. Some of them just see it as a football tool or maybe just a soccer tool or something of that nature, but it really can, if it's available in your facility, it really can, make a difference for student athletes. It's one thing to tell them they're doing something wrong, or it's one thing to suggest they do something better. When you can show them, it's a heck of a lot better. And Huddle is that one-stop shop, and we're trying to get more and more of that streaming piece out there as well this year as we try to grow. And so to have that sort of one piece that can be a coaching tool as well as a streaming media tool, can't ask for much better than that.
Oh, thanks again, Todd, for sharing that. And I was the same way. I knew how good Huddle was from a football perspective, but when I was talking to them from an AD perspective, I was worried would our coaches like it? And they just loved it. It was great. And the Huddle people really worked hard to make them feel at ease working it. We had the cameras in the gym. We had the cameras out on the field. And our coaches, they just love using their cell phones, programming it, deciding to video practice. And it was great also to be able to send video when you chose to a parent and let them see, maybe what their kid was doing or not doing. So thanks for sharing that.
Appreciate it.
Once again, for our listeners, our guest today is Todd Robbins. He's the athletic director at Fitchburg High School. Todd, one of our segments, we like to have our guests talk about the journey that they are on with their state association, as well as with the NIAAA. So again, you came, you already talked about this, you came in kind of a non-traditional route to becoming an athletic director. So how did you first get involved with your state association and with the NIAAA?
Yeah, no question about it. Again, this is where being a media member was a benefit, right? A lot of new ADs are meeting their counterparts for the first time. Now I'm actually sitting with them as a peer. So it's a little bit different. I have a lot of established relationships among this core of ADs. As I said to him when I first got introduced at a league meeting, I said, I'm the guy that's been hounding you for rosters pretty routinely. Now I'm the guy that's going to make sure people get the rosters along the way. So, I sort of feel for being on this side as well. So that part has been really great. And it's exciting to sort of get involved and get to participate and again, see this from the other side. And I feel really comfortable with this group, both in my league and as well as at the statewide level, because again, a lot of them are people I've been working with, over the years. So it's exciting to sort of be now a colleague, dig in, do the work, and to get a chance to really, again, provide a different perspective into this group than maybe that they've had and considered before. At times a colleague of mine who was a football coach who I worked with and then became the AD at Leominster, he turned at me at the last meeting and he goes, you see what we're talking about? He goes, and you were worried about rosters. I go, I'm still worried about rosters. But at the end of the day, I understand the importance, of what goes on and how many, deep dive conversations that there are that need to happen. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the conferences, attending the meetings, in a continuing basis. And I've enjoyed it thus far. On the national level, I became involved with NIAAA thanks to my master's program. I knew that as a teacher here in Massachusetts, you have to, as you continue to matriculate your license, you need to add a master's degree. And I would say, back when I was graduating high school, going to college for my undergrad, that was a massive victory in and of itself. I was first generation to college in my family. I was the oldest of two. Neither my parents nor my grandparents had gone to college. So I considered myself incredibly fortunate to go to a college or university and to get a 4-year degree and be able to pursue something that I was passionate about. When I was graduating from there, I thought that was probably the end of it, as at the time, sports broadcasters, there weren't a lot of them that were running around with master's degrees. But when I made the turn to go into education, I knew that a master's degree was going to be something I was going to want to pursue and need to pursue. So then the question became, what was the right fit master's degree? And with the ends target being, if I was going to transition away from the classroom in a job that I loved, it was going to have to be for a job I was going to love equally or more. And that was going to be athletic administration. And so so when I started shopping for programs, I narrowed it down to the ones that had the NIAAA connection, and sort of worked from that group, and then narrowed it down further to two. There were two that really interested me. One was the University of Cincinnati, and the other was West Virginia University. And I applied to both, was accepted to both. The difference maker for me and why I chose the University of Cincinnati for my master's work, which was one of the most phenomenal decisions that I have made academically, was the capstone project that was part of the curriculum. The ability to dig in and really get to work with a high school and really get to study something and find a fix and solution for it, and then bring it into reality. And so for me here in Massachusetts, the big thing that was going on as I was doing that master's work has been the transitions away from mascots that were related to Native American symbolism and moving toward what would happen, how would you make that transition. And so I was able to do my master's work overseen by Dr. Kelly in my capstone, the Dr. David Kelly at the University of Cincinnati, and he helped me to sort of get that going. I worked with a high school here that had a Native American mascot. We studied it deeply, and really was able to turn out a product I was very proud of in the end, along with a lot of other great projects that I see the application of now being in this chair, as an athletic administrator. It was always, they obviously taught the program to people who were interested in collegiate administration, professional sport administration, and then high school administration. I knew in working with Dr. Kelly that was my focus. I wanted to be an interscholastic athletic administrator. And so I tailored my projects and everything I did toward being in this chair and making it, an experience that was going to build my experience in this job and my portfolio of skills that I had. And I'm incredibly fortunate. I knew Dr. Kelly and I were going to hit it off on the first day. We got into a meeting like this. It was on Zoom because it was during COVID. And obviously it was an online program I was a part of. And, all of us in this cohort were together and they were like, okay, we're going to go around the Zoom meeting and have people introduce themselves. And then it was the adult crickets. Nobody actually said a word, and volunteered to speak. And so Dr. Kelly goes, I want to hear from Todd Robbins. He's a Syracuse man. He would want to be the person to lead us off. And came to find out that he had done some of his educational work at Syracuse University, and sort of that built our relationship from there. And like I said, incredibly fortunate. Despite being from long distance and having only been in person together at my graduation, I can't tell you how close I feel to Dr. Kelly. We communicate regularly, and I appreciate him connecting, the two of us, and getting the opportunity to be here today.
No, absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing that story. Dr. Kelly's been on this podcast a number of times as a regular guest and also did a couple of features. He's also directed a number of his University of Cincinnati graduates, to us. And there's a lot of great programs out there that are affiliated with the NIAAA. Obviously, the University of Cincinnati program is one of them, and we were very happy to promote them. Todd, we're going to do this at the end of the podcast as well, but obviously, you've got a lot to offer to our listeners as a resource, and that's one of the things we try to do is make connections. If one of our listeners wanted to reach out, pick your brain a little bit, maybe about your University of Cincinnati experience, or maybe about how they can do some things with streaming or broadcasting, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. My work email is the best place to find me. So it's Robbins, Robbins, T for Todd, at fitchburg.k12.ma.us. Yes, it is the world's longest email address, but those are pretty common here in Massachusetts. So Robbins T at fitchburg.k12.ma.us.
Oh, that's not long at all. I think that's maybe somewhere in the middle. I've seen some longer ones. We're going to take another quick break, but again, we appreciate you listening. Hang around. There's going to be more best practices coming up with Todd Robbins, the athletic director at Fitchburg High School. We'll be right back. We'd like to thank Snap Mobile for their support of the Educational AD podcast. Their website is SnapRaise. Go to snapraise.com. Check out their entire suite of platforms designed to help you do your job better. If you're looking for a fundraising platform, stop right here. SnapRaise is hands down the best one available We used it at our school with a number of our teams with great success. The coaches loved it. The parents loved it. What's more important, it works. And they even have a program where they will give you your funding before you actually start your fundraiser. Nobody else does that. But there's also a lot more. You've got Snap Connect, Snap Store, Snap Manage. You can find it all at snapraise.com. We'd also like to thank Hometown Ticketing. It's the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. I don't think I need to say anything more. But if you go to hometownticketing.com, their team is going to show you how to set up and sell your tickets online, not just for athletic events, but for things like school plays, school concerts, dances, even graduation. And here's the best part. Every school gets assigned a dedicated client success manager that's going to provide you hands-on support every step of the way. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more. We'd also like to say thank you to Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo and see their score tables and their score boards in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made as an AD was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Of course, we use it for home games, but we also use it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. It's tremendously versatile, and the customer service is just outstanding. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that live web demo today. Sidelineinteractive.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Todd, you were talking during the break about, you're currently an RAA, but, how did that end up, happening? Because, again, it doesn't happen by accident. And what are your NIAAA plans for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Kelly offers the tie-in part of that program at Cincinnati, and sort of you can do it in tandem with your master's work, and that's again what attracted me there. And so I went through. I did the 3 online classes, that brought me to that place, with the RAA, and to be able to have that going into obviously the interview process here, when everyone had sort of the various pieces that they could pull out and say, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, but I am a registered athletic administrator. That was a real difference maker when you're starting to put forward your resume and really start to describe why you're qualified, to take that on. So it's, I've got a master's and I'm a registered athletic administrator, and I'm excited to pursue that. Obviously, I couldn't take it to the next level until I served in this capacity for 2 years. So I'm excited to be here now, and to get my 2 years together. And in the meantime, get the coursework done with the NIAAA to be able to take that test and move to the CAA level, just as soon as that 2-year window is up. So I'm excited about it. It's a great program. I've got the things earmarked. I'm excited to hit the national conference at some point, hopefully pretty routinely, so I've got all those things sort of on my radar. And I'll tell you, there are some ADs in this region, whether it's Jay Costa at Shrewsbury, Tanya Rich, at Neshoba, who are really great sort of pillars of these items, have been incredibly successful with the Massachusetts Association of Athletic Directors, and then use that to sort of catapult themselves to the national level. And that's sort of the trail that I hope to follow behind, in the near future.
Oh, well, good. And again, I appreciate you sharing that. Again, the RAA is out there. There's no test. There's no exam. You have to take the 2 courses, and it's a way for people like you that, are coming into the athletic administration profession to have that designation. And it shows that, you are truly a professional and seeking, professional certification down the road. Hopefully your path will bring you down to my state, down to Florida this coming December for that national conference. So, talk to your principal, tell them how important that is. If you need me to make a phone call, I'll be happy to do that too.
I appreciate that.
Todd, one of the things we try to do with this podcast is the idea of sharing best practices. Now, I know you've only been on the job at Fitchburg for a few months, but what are some things that you do with your program, or maybe that you're planning to do, that you're particularly proud of that you can share with our listeners?
No, I appreciate that. And, I think the one thing for me, again, with that different perspective. The communications piece has really been something that I have been pushing forward, and it's in tandem, right? There is the communications piece that you are using the Gipper a platform, and you're putting it out on your social media accounts, and you are getting people drawn in and trying to build a community around your athletic department through increasing information that is out there. That's one part. And then there's just the simple communication piece, as simple as picking up the telephone, and that's one of the criticisms that I hear often and heard often as a media member about athletic directors. Well, they're unresponsive. Well, they don't answer. Well, they don't call back. Well, they don't answer email, or they don't send me a roster. That was always my nick on an athletic director, until game day. And to me, those are things that I am prioritizing. When the phone rings, I answer it. When the email comes in, I try to answer it within a couple of hours. And, you could spend all day long chasing your tail doing those things in this job. There is certainly a lot of it. But that is definitely, for me, Ben, I think it's easy. And I think the community really responds to it, and then there's the sort of, you have to be the biggest cheerleader for your athletic program. And the thing that I have gotten, as feedback to me in the early going has been, from this community, a thank you for the increased communication. And then, sort of an attaboy pat on the back for the energy that I've brought and tried to inject into this athletic department. And I really want people to sort of see it and realign. Athletics at the high school level is not just simply a recreation. It's not travel sports. It's not any of those things. It's not youth sports. It is something special. Our games are events, and they need to be treated like events that can build a whole community around them. That's what the people at the college level, that's what the people in the professional level have been doing for years. It's the same principle that can be applied here. If you want to build a community, you've got to get that community excited. You've got to get them coming to your events in order to help sort of pull everybody together. That's the power of athletics, is the power to unite people. I said in my my letter here and in a couple of my interviews, I really believe in athletics' power to weave a tapestry in a community. You can weave it together and really pull everyone together. And a lot of times, and this community certainly has been one of them, it's sorely needed. We need this at this point in time. We need our teams to pull our community together and help us grow and get to be the community we aspire to be. And I firmly believe in athletics' ability to do that. And the only way you can do that is by talking to people, having that open door policy when they want to walk in, answering the phone, answering the emails, and then obviously getting out there and reminding people you exist. It's very easy for them to just think, oh yeah, they play sports there, yada, yada. But they are events. They're events we want people to come to. And I feel very lucky. There's a couple of things that, obviously that I arrived at a really fortunate time here that are going to be events that are going to get people excited. Number one, they have been waiting for a long time. We have a historic football stadium that has been around for a very long time, Crocker Field. And Crocker Field was designed by the Olmsted brothers, folks that are responsible for some of the most famous landscape architecture in our country. And that same firm designed, developed, and helped construct Crocker Field. And Crocker Field needs a little boost, and that boost is going to be field turf. It's going to be the ability to bring it to a modern playing surface. And so the opportunity to get that, we are in the process of putting the bid together, and hopefully shovel hits the ground in the spring. And by next season, we're talking about field turf and an event where people can come out to a modernized facility and see a historic gem with a modern playing surface that's going to re-inject some energy around that. So that's one component. And then component number two, we talked about the Leominster-Fitchburg rivalry a little bit. We have an incredibly old and historic football rivalry in this community between Leominster and Fitchburg. This year will be our 143rd meeting, our 117th on Thanksgiving. And this year we made the decision. How about this for a first day on the job, Jake? Fenway Park has been hosting Thanksgiving Day football games and has been pursuing the Leominster and Fitchburg series a number of times. And on my very first day on the job, Fenway Park called here because it's our home game this year to try to see if we would be interested in moving this time. And this was the year to do it. Obviously, it took a counterpart, Dave Palazzi, the athletic director over at Leominster. We got together. We convinced our administrations this was the year to do it. And so we're moving our Thanksgiving Day Classic for the 143rd meeting to Fenway Park on this Thanksgiving Eve. It will be played, usually it's 10 a.m. Thursday morning. It will be played at 6:30 on Wednesday night. But that was day one call from Fenway Park, day 3 meeting with Fenway Park. And then within the first month, the agreement from everybody to agree to move the game. It has been a busy, first month and a half, but I'll say this, those items are the signature piece of that event that I'm hoping we can promote. And yeah, is it a risk? Are we hearing from some of the traditionalists that they're not thrilled? Sure, but I'm hearing from 95% of people that are excited that we are re-injecting some excitement into these facilities and into this, historic rivalry series. And that's what we want. History can be practical, and we need to respect our history while representing the future.
Wow, that is just the rivalry itself, very cool story. But the Fenway Park venue for this year. I'm not trying to coerce you in any way, but down the road, as you are putting together possible CMAA projects, that rivalry, the field turf, the Fenway Park. I mean, what a great story that you could tell. This is the history. This is what we did. This is how it played out, and now it's going to be a year or two down the road for you.
Sure.
There's going to be some post history of that too. So, well done. Very cool.
Appreciate that.
Todd, this has been a lot of fun spending some time with you. Again, getting to know you and having you share, but we're not done yet. We always wrap up with the athletic director toolbox segment. Now, you're new as an AD, but you're certainly not new to the world of athletics. So we're going to take our final break and hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsor this segment. When we come back, we're going to find out what Todd Robbins from Fitchburg High School is going to put into his new athletic director toolbox. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys, who sponsor the AD Toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic Surveys are a quick, easy, and an affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Now, athletic directors already hear back from the complainers, that 5% that want to gripe about everything. Athletic Surveys not only connects you to that group, but they also connect you to the 95% that supports your program. And that's a tremendously valuable tool to have when you're talking with a frustrated parent, or maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of your players and your parents. That's athleticsurveys.com. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We have been visiting today with Todd Robbins. He's the athletic director at Fitchburg High School in Massachusetts. Has a tremendous background in athletics, but right now I'm going to challenge him to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. But I'm only going to let him put 3 things in the toolbox. So, Todd, what 3 items are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
No, I appreciate the opportunity, Jake, and I thank you so much for having me. I think, to me, when I think about, as a new AD, somebody who has been living this, I think one thing I would put in that toolbox is generous listening. You have got to be a generous listener in this role, especially when you're coming on new. When I was a teacher, the thing that drove me nuts was when new administrators would come along and they would just say, well, anything that existed before I got here, gone. Here's my new thing, and this is where we're going to go. And what that said to me was they didn't want to hear about what the problems were. They didn't want to know what was good either. They just had their thing, their blinders were on, and they were going to do it. And so for me, the thing that I've really tried to do here is I've tried to be a really generous listener. And as a communicator, sometimes that can be hard because I got a lot to say if you haven't seen that. So that generous listening piece, you got to bring that with you in your toolbox. You've got to sit people down. You've got to hear what they have to say. You've got to let them know that this is a place you can be heard, and to bring your concerns, to bring your victories, to bring your challenges, and see where then together from that generous listening, you can then get to some real solutions in what you may be able to do, or identify what you are doing well and what are our best practices that we're able to take with us. So definitely, I would want to take generous listening with me wherever I ultimately went. And then I think you have to take a more global view of this job, as we were talking about, sort of that event component, right? So what's the item that you take with you, in order to do that? I think you've got to be open-minded. And so I think I would put open-mindedness into that box, willing to consider what it is that we are doing as athletic administrators and seeing it for more than just the clerical role, right? If this was simply a clerical job, then you could get, in theory, anybody to do it. Anybody can book buses. Anybody can put games on a calendar. Anybody can, schedule officials. This job is so much more than that. And so you've got to come into this with a real open mind to be able to take the tools that you've been talking about today and the generous sponsors that you're talking about. All those tools, if you're going to implement them, are very different than the way job was done 40 years ago when you took the job, and so when you look at that piece of this, right? And so to me, being open-minded, willing to implement new things, willing to try some stuff, and being willing to maybe fail forward, right? There is that possibility that something you may implement may not work out. That is the risk that you have to take, but willing to take that risk, be open-minded, try to do something new and different, and experience something different. That's another thing that I think is incredibly important to this. And then, of course, I wouldn't be the communications-based AD if I didn't say that you bring your communications devices and your social media platforms, and they go in the box with you, because they are the tools with which you are communicating your athletic department out in various capacities. You've got, your stakeholders that are your student athletes. You've got to communicate with them. You get your stakeholders that are your coaches. You've got to be able to communicate with them. And you've got to build lines of communication in order to be able to do that and meet them where they are. So right now, Sport U is one of the things we've been using a lot of, because my coaches needed to find a way to safely communicate with their student athletes. And I was not thrilled with the concept of trading cell phone numbers and private communication. To me, that just leads to problems. And so to me, to be able to have this Sport U piece, it reminds me a lot of Remind 101 we used as a classroom-based thing, similar type app that came before it, but this one targeted to sports specifically. To have a tool like that can create safe lines of communication for your coaches, to their student athletes, to the athletic director, to the student athletes and parents, to be able to have that piece while still having that instant communication, but not using your personal devices and numbers to be able to do that, and allows an AD to be able to monitor it. Those are a huge piece. So you got to put all of those communications tools in the toolbox, and then you've got to implement them. You've got to be willing to do the work to make those communications pieces. As I said, I can't tell you the number of times I said it in my interview. When the phone rings, you answer it. It's really that simple in the grand scheme of things. When the email comes in, you respond to it. And when the parent's knocking at your door, you invite them in to sit down and you have that conversation. Or when the student athlete's there. Just before we came on, I had 2 student athletes that want to come in. We're going to be hiring a new boys varsity basketball coach. They knew the job was posted. 2 student athletes walked into my office and asked if they could give their thoughts about it. And I said, absolutely, pull up a chair to my desk and let's talk about it. And so that communications piece has got to be in this box. You've got to be willing to listen generously, be open-minded, and use the tools for communications that are available to you in order to be able to do this job effectively.
Well, I love them all. And, regular listeners, hear me say this all the time, that listening was a tool that it took me way too long to figure out, how important it was and how to use it. Once I did, life was so much easier. But I love the word you attach to it. Be a generous listener. Very cool stuff. Todd, one more time, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out, pick your brain a little bit. Listeners, I think you got a good resource here. What's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Absolutely. It's my email address here at work, Robbins, Robbins, at fitchburg.k12.ma.us. I almost slipped in my other school because my email address was similar there as well, but I got through it. Robbins at fitchburg.k12.ma.us.
Hey, it's all part of communicating, right? Hey.
That's right.
Todd, thanks again for sharing. I know it's an incredibly busy time, but we appreciate you coming on, and all the best moving forward with, the fall seasons.
No, thank you so much, Jake. And thank you for doing this podcast. It's an incredibly great resource for athletic directors to be able to listen to their colleagues. And maybe if you can't directly network all the time, to be able to hear different ideas from around the country and people's experiences, it makes all the difference in the world. So I appreciate the work you're doing.
Oh, gosh. Thank you so much. I enjoy it. And as I've said, as long as people keep listening, we're going to keep doing it. Speaking of our listeners, we appreciate you tuning in, and we upload the Zoom recordings of these podcasts to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. I hope you have a great day. Come back next time for another great interview, and just about every day for new content on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time.